Welcome to Heartland Makes and Outdoors. In today's video, we're out fishing in the kayak and we're going to do a 10-year review on the Jackson 14-foot Cuda. Bought this kayak back in 2011. If you do the math on it, that's over 10 years. 2 years I didn't get to fish out of it, but let's get to the video. Well, I've got to start out with this. We did get the rudder kit on this kayak, and it is actually an awesome tool to have. If you guys are looking at kayaks, I'd strongly suggest looking at one that you can either put a rudder on and or make sure that it's got a rudder on it from the factory. That makes a world of difference when you're out here. Our very first kayak that we got, or the very first one that I got, was back in 2010, and it was the Jackson Coda. So far, I've been nothing but a Jackson owner. And we'll start out with the pros. Number one, if you're fishing lakes, it's a great kayak. It's one of those kayaks that's you can get across the lake pretty easy. I've been fishing out of this thing for years, guys. We've taken it to Colorado, we've taken it to Texas, and then of course when we bought this, my home state was Oklahoma. I'm now living in East Texas, and we're fishing in East Texas right now. But this kayak's pretty stable for what it is. You're going to see guys that are really, really talented and gifted that can actually stand up in this kayak. I'm not that good, guys. I'll tell you right now. I'd do good to just sit here in the high position. If the water's choppy, I will put the seat in the low position. So that is one of the benefits about the Jackson kayak, is you do have the high and the low position, and it's pretty handy to have both. For the different water conditions. I've traveled everywhere. The only problems that I've had with traveling with it is my wife's actually got a 2011 Jackson 14-foot Cuda as well with the rudder. And when we were going to our trip in Colorado, the rear hatch popped off. Now it does have a string on it, but when you're doing 70 miles an hour and you don't know it, when we got to our lake that we were fishing for trout fishing, and that was all fly fishing out of the Jackson Coda Kayak. And it was a great trip. I'll show you some pictures of that here in a second, guys. But we lost the top to her rear hatch, and I think it had something to do with the pressure, just kind of like your ears popping when you're going up and down the mountains. And because we did go through some storms or whatever, so since then what I've done is I'll duct tape that rear hatch, just put a strip of duct tape across the back of it. I'll show you guys a picture of that, and then I also duct tape the rudder down, because if you're pulling it on a trailer or on top of a camper like we were, that rudder catches all the wind when it's in the up position, bends it around, and I think you risk a chance of breaking it. So I just go ahead and I tape it down with a deal of duct tape as well. If I'm going on a long trip, I'll put 2 pieces of duct tape, that way the rudder doesn't cut through the duct tape. Now then, one of the next things that I really, really love about this kayak is you've got a fair amount of rod storage for an older generation kayak. You can actually haul 4 rods and reels the way that it's set up from the factory. You got a little cover up in the front that will kind of protect your rods, so if you're going into brushy areas or whatever, you can keep your rod tips tucked inside the kayak. I really like that feature, and it works out great. You got the bungee cords on this kayak. Speaking of bungee cords, the only thing that I've had to replace on this kayak was the bungee cords after about 9 years, and that's keeping the kayak covered. I did have to replace the bungee cords. They just simply wore out. And you've got bungee cords in the front, you got a bungee cord back in the back, and I'll show you the little bait box that I've built that I use, or tackle box, whatever you want to call it, that fits in. It's just a milk crate that I converted into a fishing tackle box, and it straps down nicely as well. As you can see, probably over my right shoulder, there's a GoPro up there, and that is attached to that fish bait bucket that I built for less than 15 bucks. And I really enjoy it. It works nice. You can carry a lot of extra stuff. Now, with that said, I don't know what the weight limit is on this kayak, probably 425 or whatever. I think the kayak by itself weighs about 75 or 80 pounds, so it's not super heavy. We did want lightweight kayaks simply because we knew we'd be putting them on top of the camper and taking them out of state, going to Colorado and fly fishing and stuff for the trout on the smaller lakes up there in Colorado. So I wanted a kayak that was small, lightweight, and still had the good trackability. That 14 foot seemed to be the sweet spot, because you could still get out on some of the bigger lakes and fish that way. And in Oklahoma, our favorite lakes, and I'll tell you guys this, my two favorite kayaking lakes, or three, one of them was Mountain Lake, which was down south, and I've got a real fun story about Mountain Lake I'll share with you guys one of these days. And the next one's going to be Sportsman's Lake. It's east of Shawnee. And then our favorite lake of all probably is Wetumpka Lake, and it's just a phenomenal lake, and it's kind of one of those hidden gems. Nobody really talks about Wetumpka. It's a small lake, but it's a perfect kayaking lake, and that was one of the things that we really loved about it. They got good campgrounds, and again, enough about that. We're just going to stick with the Jackson Kayak review. But those are, if you guys are from Oklahoma, those are three lakes that you definitely need to check out if you're kayak fishing. Now then, back to the boat. If you can see right here, and I don't know how well you'll be able to see it, there is a center storage. I'll use a different camera when we get off of the lake and show you guys that. But it is actually very awesome place right here in the center for storage. Down here I built a little tray that'll hold my pliers and stuff like that I use when I'm fishing. You can put some fingernail clippers or the little clippers to cut the lines, whatever kind of clippers you guys are using, and that works out nicely there. The foot track system on this that you can steer your rudder with, mine has been super tight from the get-go. Angie's is actually really loose. Hers is at the opposite extreme. Mine felt like it had sand in it when I bought it, and I have had to adjust that and lube that up a couple of times over the years. Again, we keep these covered or in a garage, either way, but they're always in the cover. I'm not sure where the sand came from. That could have just been from fishing or whatever, who knows. Rudder system using your feet works out really good. It works out real good if you got a breeze. Like today, this lake we're on, we've got about a 3-mile-an-hour wind. I'm up here in a little cove out of the wind on purpose, trying to get this video made for you guys. It's got a nice big hatch up front, and again, you got the hatch in the rear. Both of those, you can store quite a bit of junk in there. If you guys can see, and I don't know if you can see it from where you're at, you can probably hear the beeping, but I do have a fish finder in this kayak. I started out with a little bitty one, and it basically just told you the depth, and you could occasionally see a fish on it or whatever. I have upgraded that since we're doing a lot more kayak fishing here in East Texas, because we've got some amazing lakes that are just super awesome lakes within 30-minute drive of us. This lake I'm at right now is about an hour drive. So I have upgraded the fish finder. Again, that's not something that comes on the kayak, but the reason I'm telling you about it is you do have several places that you could mount a fish finder. You got a good spot to mount your anything that you want on this thing. I've got a side trolley or an anchor trolley on the side of it. Again, that's another deal that I pieced together, DIY. I try to do as much as I can DIY because we're on a budget, and fishing is a hobby. I'd love to fill up the freezer, but I also understand that you're just not always going to be able to fill up the freezer. So being just a hobby, I try to do as much as I can DIY stuff. And hang on guys, I'm going to switch poles. I've got another lure rigged up. This one ain't getting us anything. I'm really surprised. I normally do pretty good with my road runners. Figure out which, there we go. All right, fellas, we're back off to the races. I'm looking for crappie today, guys. This is supposed to be an awesome crappie lake. We'll find out if it is or not, or find out if I'm any good at catching crappie. One or the other. It's bound to happen. Keep seeing some fish messing around over there, so kind of feel like, dang, that was a terrible cast. Kind of feel like we're in a good spot. Hey, speaking of that, you guys that are looking at buying a kayak for fishing, how many of y'all actually watch the Moon Guide or any of that stuff when you're looking at places to go kayak fishing or fishing in general? I know, being a bow hunter, I bought that Moon Guide years and years ago, and that's something that I continue to gauge my fishing days on. By the time you load it down with a lot of gear, guys, you can expect this kayak to weigh about 100 pounds. And if it helps for general purposes, I'm 6 foot and I weigh right at 200 pounds with my fishing gear on. That's personal flotation device or whatever. If you guys are curious, I mean, this kayak, I'm in the high position and it's pretty stable overall. I would not want to take my pup with me. I enjoy my dog. I'm not gonna lie. The kayak's a great kayak. It's pretty stable for what it is. It's still relatively lightweight, so you can get it out, put it on top of a camper. If you got like a pop-up camper or whatever, you can haul it from state to state. You can get it in the back of your truck. I got one of those tailgate extender deals to where you can put this thing in the back of the truck if you wanted to. I haven't done that because we've got a short wheelbase pickup as well, but I've got a kayak or a trailer that I've rigged up to be my little kayak trailer, and this thing is super easy to load and unload. That's one of the benefits to this one versus one of the big ones. And I know and I know my dad bought that Hobie Pro Angler, that PA14, back in 2011 when I bought this, and guys, that's an amazing kayak. He went all out on that kayak. He had the electric trolling motor and all that, or it's a drop-in motor that I believe is made by Torpedo. But my problem back then was I didn't want a kayak that big and that heavy. I wanted something that I could tote around, get into some of these back channels and creeks, maybe even go through a pasture or whatever if need be, and that Hobie PA was just way more than that. I do believe that one would be a perfect kayak for taking the pup with me. But again, that kayak cost a lot of money, and I don't know that I'm going to have that kind of money when I get ready to buy a new kayak. And again, like I say, I'm keeping this one. This has just been a phenomenal kayak. I absolutely love it. Again, it's got a lot of great features to it, and it's holding up well. I know this video is getting long, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and shut it off. But I do want to tell you this, and I'm going to put show you a picture of a spray bottle, and it's called 303 or 313, and it is a UV kayak plastic protectant spray that has really kept this thing shiny and kept the plastic in good shape. I haven't got any cracks, any problems with this kayak, none whatsoever, and it's definitely worth it by the time you invest the money in a kayak. Spend a few extra bucks on this protectant, and it'll keep your kayak, not only will it keep your bottom slick so you can go through the water easier, it's a UV protectant to keep the sun from destroying your kayak. Even if you do leave it covered, when you get out fishing, every time that you get out and you've got a sunburn, you can imagine what that's done to your kayak plastic as well. It's just kind of degrading it a little bit each time you get out. Again, guys, we appreciate your likes, comments, and subscribes. If you like kayak fishing, we're going to start doing quite a bit more of it this year, and we're rolling up into June right now. It's June 15th roughly, somewhere in there as far as the date. And I know I'm getting a late start, but guys, since the move, we've really had to struggle with getting so much stuff built and done. We're just now kind of getting to that point where I can relax, go do some fishing occasionally, and again, I'll be using the Moon Guide for that. Go out on the days that I think the fish are biting. Again, we appreciate your likes, comments, and subscribes. I hope you all have a blessed week. If you like kayak fishing, I'd love to talk you into subscribing. Again, get outside.